The hardest thing I think in leadership that I don't think is going anywhere. And the thing that is most, most sought after now, especially with the lack of face to face, and everything being so remote,
Yeah.
holding people accountable is super important.
Yeah. And I like I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said holding people accountable, having more direct, sooner and clearer conversations.
Yeah, I really believe because I'm actually it's not my strength, and I haven't learned to have more direct conversations. But I believe sooner and clearer is always better.
Welcome to another episode of Made to Matter, where we help entrepreneurs build what matters, both in business and in life. And I am excited to have Max Hansen here with us today from Y Scouts. And Max, I think you and I ran into each other at Conscious Capitalism Conference back in the day. It was well before COVID. I know that. And you and I quickly, hit it off because I think we're both passionate about the same thing, and that is this idea of where business and purpose intersect. And I just remember meeting you, and I think you and I talked for 3 hours straight or something like that. So I'm glad to have you on the pod, and just great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you, man. I was looking forward to this. It'll be fun catching up and just having a great conversation.
Yeah, well, looking forward to it. So why don't you tell? Well, let me. I'll kick it off with this, and then I like to for you to tell the audience a little bit more information about yourself. But I immediately hired Max and his company, Y Scouts, because we are up and up. My agency it was a purpose driven agency, and has a very unique, or Y Scouts has a very unique positioning, and that you help purpose driven companies find purpose driven people. And that's exactly what I want. So you overhauled our hiring process up until I sold it in 2023. We were still had at least a heavy dose of Y Scouts in our hiring process. So that was a great partnership that we enjoyed for quite a long time. So there you have it. I'll now turn it over to you to fill in the details. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I have been in recruiting since 1998, but that's kind of dating me. But that kind of that's why I don't have any hair and aging nicely. But so I was lucky enough to start my first recruiting company January of 2002. Interesting enough, as I look back and kind of we'll talk about the meaning of all this because I'm still trying to make sense of it all. But January 2002 is right after 9/11, which was an
Mhm.
interesting time. And I think these events in life, which we'll get into and that everybody's been through, including COVID and I think they've really shaped how people view work. So when I came out of the gate, I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know wanted to chase after something that had meaning. I literally just wanted to be able to
Mm.
work for myself. Nobody in my family I don't come from a entrepreneurial family necessarily, although my brother is an entrepreneur as well. We set out to start a recruiting company. I had 4 years experience. I started out working for Aerotech, which shout out to them. They were really great at teaching me the fundamentals of recruiting. So I'd give them a lot of
Mm.
credit for me
Cool.
having a great foundation. So we started January 2002 and it was a grind.
Yeah.
But
What a time to start a recruiting firm. For those,
yeah,
maybe you're not old like Max and I, because that's when I started up and up as well. It was probably one of the most challenging business environments I've ever been in. I thought it was more challenging than COVID, and it was more challenging than the Great Recession. It was right after 9/11. It was tough.
yeah, it was like one of those things where when you told somebody you're starting a business, they were like, why would you start it right now? But you fast forward, and I'm sure this kind of happened to you. It was tough going for a while. I learned a lot about myself during that time. But we started, and so we play this out, and so for about 10 years, the first year was a little slow go, but we came out of the gate pretty hot. And then we grew. We were super lucky. This ride was one that I still appreciate. We grew over 100% year over year till we're doing over 50 million. And it was fun. We were young. We had a lot of fun in our office. Obviously, we're in office. We're in Tempe, Arizona. Our team was great. We had a lot of great accounts. We ended up hiring over 50,000 people. And we learned a lot of stuff. I mean, that's the foundation that I had in
Yeah.
starting Y Scouts, which in the learning that I had from the company was called Job Brokers, by the way, which I think is ironic because when I
Wow.
really started to figure out what do people really want in life, it certainly wasn't like people aren't like, I want a job. I mean, people want
Right.
careers or something a
That's a
little bit.
really, really strong name, job brokers.
Job brokers. Yeah, and another thing people don't really want is brokers. You know what I mean? Like a broker's just coming in to take a
You're
cut.
like, let's combine these 2 bad things into one, like, and then
Yeah.
that'll make it good.
And
Well,
actually,
obviously it worked, huh?
it worked, yeah, and the funny thing was is I had by the time we were done, we had people, like, using job brokers as, like, a coined term, not quite like Kleenex, but, like, people were like, "Hey," they would, use it, like, as a general term,
Yeah.
but it was a like I said, it was a super fun ride. I think where it led, though, is at some point along the way, I'd say, we started in 2002. I'd say about 2008 or 9, I started to really kind of question what it is I was doing because what I started to realize, and I'm not bad talking all contingent contract to hire recruiting in general because it's a needed, kind of skill set and a needed industry. But I was the biz dev guy, and I started to realize that I was basically preying on the ineptness of people's ability to hire at bigger companies and coming in and kind of doing the contract to hire.
Mm.
And the reason why I say praying is like the scenario was, and I once I learned this, I've kind of like, I don't know if I like doing this. I don't feel ethical. Or I knew there was something more for me out there, but we would go find a company. It's almost like you'd find a company that was just bad enough at their own entire internal hiring that they'd have a lot of turnover. So then we would continue to hire these people on a contract to hire basis, and you're kind of continuing to fill the same seat. They're fine with the turnover, and you build up a payroll of in some cases hundreds and some cases thousands of people in just one company that we were working
Yeah.
with. So it was
There's
that.
a lot of there are a lot of companies. I think like the mobile home industry does that. They'll finance a mobile home, the people can't pay it, they take it back. Like they'll sell the same mobile home like 7 times, 20 times. You were, I mean, job you were sort of like the mobile home. You were you were selling the same job over and over and over again.
In many cases, yeah, and for big
Yeah. Okay.
companies too. I'm not gonna, these are all great companies, but there were big companies like Goodrich Aircraft Interior Products. I mean, we did some cool stuff. I will say, some of the like highlights
Yeah.
are, some of the big wins we had, like the A380, which is Airbus's like largest,
Cool.
commercial
Yeah.
plane. We helped the Goodrich, which built the evacuation system. So all the slides, it's a double decker, so they have double decker slides. We helped found a design engineer that fixed a design flaw for them. And they brought me into the boardroom with Airbus and Goodrich's like executive team. And they were like, "Hey, listen, I know your company's small, but since you guys helped us solve this, do you want the rest of the work to do all the production work?" So we got all the production work. And so
Wow.
we hired
Cool.
hundreds of people. So there were a lot of things that were
Yeah.
like
There
fun about it.
Yeah, there's the high side, right, of what we do, and then there's the low side or the shadow. And like for instance, with Up and Up and marketing and branding, like let's say we'd sell a 200 quarter of a million dollar brand, website, whatever, and then we would watch our clients ruin that, right? Over the next 6 months. And that's like, oh my gosh, no, it was so and it's like, and you knew there's a high probability that was gonna happen, and that's so, like, from my, example, that'd be like, that's the side you go, "Ugh," don't feel totally, great about that, but so anyway, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
alright, you're starting to have some dissonance, basically in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah, I mean, there were 3 things that really stick out to me was that turnover issue where I started to realize like it was we were printing cash. I mean, but I was starting to kind of think about it. And actually the thing that made me like kind of take pause on it was I have a son that's 21 years old. So at the time, maybe he was like 6 or 7, 8 years old at that time.
Mhm.
And for me, it was more about, obviously those are the more meaningful, things in life. God and your parent, your kids and your family are, the most important things in life. But so I started to think about it, I was like, I don't really know if this is like, if I feel comfortable as like, this is how I can rely on this to feed my son for the rest of his life. So
Okay.
that was kind of the things that I started to think about. And then the other two things that came into play besides that turnover and me feeling kind of like I wasn't solving like high enough issues and just like a cog in the wheel making money off like the turnover was back then it was a little bit before ACH was prevalent. And these big companies would basically use us and push us as far as we could go on our receivables. And then
Yeah.
I'd have to call and, say, hey, basically like beg for money and drive down there and then write a $2 million check. And then we kind of start the process over. And like, that was cool for the first few years. Like, then I got further in my career. I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going
Yeah.
and begging for money. And these people like waiting for me to show up to hand me a check. And they were great clients. And then the last piece that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was we had a huge account in utility scale solar, and it was an amazing client. We took him from 1 million to 80 million, and we hired hundreds of people, and we were actually managing the people on site. But there started to be a lot of injuries, and I was a little bit naive, back then because we were growing so fast. But all these injuries go on your EIN, which is
Oh,
associated to your social security number. And so I would have to, in these bad injuries, I'd have to like go on site and like look at the actual gory pictures of like, stuff happening. And because technically, if they're legally your employee, you're controlling the environment. And luckily, I had great clients where like they weren't too reckless, but there were still people getting hurt, and I still felt responsible for it. And so that was where I was kind of like, you know what? I'm too old to, I'm getting too old and too wise to be on the hook for all these injuries. So that was the kind of thing that like just pushed me over the edge to move on to the next chapter, which was leadership search. And I'd say the other thing I noticed in those hires were where it was very transactional. Hiring was very
yeah.
transactional. In fact, if you look back, the job boards, this will age us too. The job boards were relatively new concept, and when the job boards came into the picture, you now had as much real estate to run job ads as you wanted, and people could apply to hundreds of jobs in, like, minutes, and so it turned into this, like, gamification of, like, people rewriting their resume, sending a bunch of, stuff in, them getting in, interview processes, pretty much lying about what they can do, and then getting hired and then the employer being upset and then firing them. So we saw this play out over and over.
Hey, really quick, there's this concept. In order to get to where you want to be, you got to know where you currently are. So that's why I created Made to Matters Diagnostic. It helps you create a baseline where you are over several categories. And once you have that baseline and you work with a coach, you can then start moving and seeing your improvements. You go back 6 months later, maybe 12 months later, take the diagnostic again. You can see the progress that you made. But what's more important once you create that baseline is it shows you the most important things to start working on. I encourage you, it's absolutely free. Go to diagnostic.madetomatter.coach and you can sign up, and in less than 5 minutes, you can get a baseline of where you are so that you can know what to work on and improve on to get to where you want to be. Thank you. Hope you'll end up taking it and take advantage of that. Now back to the show.
And I think where we landed with Y Scouts was like the world was screaming for a process where you would take into consideration the soft skills, purpose and values alignment, in addition to professional competencies and then leadership ability. So that's kind of how we got to Y Scouts. Was we started Y Scouts in 2012. I officially sold the other companies in 2015, but it was all out of like what I had seen work and what I had not seen work. And by the way,
Yeah.
just as a note, Monster and Career Builder, I've always been anti-job, boards because they're such a disaster for most people. They amplify the gamification and embellishment of what you can do, and people have cheated the system for so long. They just actually filed bankruptcy this year because it doesn't
Uh,
work anymore.
oh, wow. Didn't know that. It's like, MapQuest going out of business or something.
Yeah, totally, totally. Oh, it was due to happen. I'd been selling against that model for so long, and so yeah. So the building the Y Scouts process has been fun, and we've seen a lot of awesome results at the leadership level. So that was another thing when I decided when I sold those businesses is that I wanted to do work that was a little bit more impactful. And if you do that at the leadership level and you find great people at the leadership level, they're impacting the people downstream from them.
Yeah.
And for me, it even goes beyond that. It's about impacting not only the people that work there, but like you're also having impact on the people that work there's family if you're an impactful leader. So there was that piece where I'm like, hey, I want to play a bigger game and I want to do leadership search because I was very interested in making sure that great leaders were aligned with, companies, especially on the soft skills on purpose, values, and culture.
Yeah. So cool. And then how different, I imagine leadership search has to be a lot different than, putting people on the Airbus production line. So what Yeah, less volume, and I would say I would guess longer hiring cycle and all that. So how does that work?
Yeah, man, I could talk about this forever. So to guide me wherever you want to go back, I'm a total dork when it comes to hiring process. Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting when I think about this, and I'll try not to get too far into the weeds to lose people, but it's interesting that people have fallen into this like default hiring process where like they think you post a job and like people are going to come to that job and then you like vet them and then you pre-screen them and then you hire them. And I think we just decided we're going to flip this on its head. The first thing we decided wanted to do is not post jobs ever.
What
And
was this, by the way, Max, I'm sorry, was this somewhat of a leadership search? Was this some of a new concept, or were the Corn Fairies already doing this, or
Yeah, no, it wasn't a new concept, but it was
okay,
a bit to us, and I'll kinda explain.
okay, okay.
I mean, we did a lot of research, so, Brian Moore, the co-founder, which I didn't think you met Brian Moore back in the day, he was on the board of Conscious Capitalism for, several years too, but, we were looking at it, from the standpoint of just overall alignment on
Mhm,
purpose and values. And so from a process standpoint, if you don't post jobs, then you take away and you control the actual process from there. And so we believe very strongly that posting jobs was the thing that was breaking stuff, and it was people were gamifying it. And then it took me a while to come to this conclusion, but I started to realize that like we're actually hiring managers. Like the people that get a hire, we at most a good point in my career, I would complain about people lying in interviews and like, why do these people do this? And like almost like they're the bad people and they're the victims.
mhm.
And then one day I kind of woke up to it, and it took me a lot of placements and job brokers, and then we rebranded as TruePath. But until I realized one day I woke up and I'm like, you know what? I'm blaming this on the wrong person. Like I need to control the things that I can control, which is the process. So then we built this process. We don't post jobs, and then even further, we go proactively, and this is how what we still do today. Proactively do outbound engagement with candidates, and then we get them in a process where we get to interview them before they know what the job details are and what the company is. And that was such an interesting
Mm,
like thing to test, and it's so interesting to see candidates love it because when you don't know why somebody's asking the question, meaning you don't know the company and the role, you simply to default to telling the truth. And so, you can ask the most basic questions of
you
like,
can't game it.
you can't game it, and
Yeah,
it feels really good for candidates not to have to think through, like, "What does this person want me to say?" versus, like, "What do I actually really feel?" And so we've leveraged that at a really deep level, and that's, kinda where we got our footing, and then we put together a leadership model, back to your question. When we researched the industries, the leadership or executive search, we'll call it. It had been the same way forever, and the resume has been the same way since like the 1400s as well. So we've really set out to change that and really have a positive impact on changing, what you see on a resume, what a resume means to people, and then on what true leadership means. The problem we had with executive search was we didn't believe that every executive was a leader. So that's why
mhm,
we kind of tried to coin leadership search. I don't know
right.
how successful we were in coining that. Everybody just knows what executive search, but we tried like heck to change that, and because we didn't believe that every leader, every executive was a leader. So we put together a leadership model that had three elevated behaviors. We still use this today. And it's really looking for proof points as how much somebody's been a relentless learner, how much they developed other people, and how they driven results. So those three things is what we believe you look for to see if somebody's a true leader.
So, learner driven, or
Developer of people.
develop people and results
Yeah.
oriented. Cool, very cool. Well, what was jumping out to me about your story is that you started the first recruiting firm, and that was traditional, right? It's somewhat traditional. It's how you did, and you guys were really successful. I think you said you go to 50 million, and like it's a big company. And then but then you had that dissonance, and you're just like you started forming a different point of view. And this is just a lot of what I encourage entrepreneurs to do is like you gotta have a point of view. And like your point of view, I mean, it came from, it sounded like it's coming from conviction. And and basically that dissonance of like I don't believe in I sort of don't believe in this model. I think there's a better way, and I want to go upstream as well. So I mean, you've been at it So where do you have anywhere else where that conviction came from, do you think?
Man, I mean, I've always been a person that was searching for my purpose, and,
Mm,
I went through this process. I'll spare you the details, but there was this guy that was building I'll give you a little bit though. He was building a piece of technology that would help you figure out your purpose. So I'm like, I met with him. I'm like, all right, well, like, walk me through this, and he was able to help me more through a conversation. They never were able to figure out the technology, but I will give him credit for this. He helped me figure out my purpose, and it was literally a simple shift in my thinking.
mm,
And so, what I would grew up like a jock. Like, I mean, all I did was play sports. I mean, life when I was younger is so easy because I God gave me some pretty good gifts as far as playing sports goes, and so that's what I did. I played sports, and that became really easy. And then I was always I always had a great relationship with my coaches, like a different type of relationship. I mean, there wasn't one sport I didn't play where, my coaches I still text with my high school baseball coach today just
hmm.
because like that's the relationship we built. But I was naturally really good at coaching because I really understood, sports well. And so for my side jobs when I was in college, I would fly to, University of Portland and do a girls basketball camp. My cousin was a head girls coach there and at Gonzaga and now at University of Oregon now. So I went and coached sports. I was like, that
Hmm.
was my like side job. And then I went to New York. Actually, I met this guy and I coached this Jewish camp sports. So I actually when I went to work, I thought that I was going to go make enough money that I got to go coach. Like
Hmm.
that's all I wanted to do. And so then my mindset was like, I just want to go back to like sports was what I knew. I just loved sports. And this guy talked to me. He was walking me through this process. And there's a few more details that I'll kind of spare you, but where he helped me, and I know this is just a small adjustment, but I started to understand my purpose was to help others better succeed in sports. I was really good at that. And his question through like this took a while, but his question was like, why can't you just do that in business? And
Uh,
like it was a shift. I was like, oh, so now, like my purpose is to help others better succeed in life. And when I'm
mhm.
doing that, like I would
Okay.
do that for free, and if I needed to,
Just don't tell anybody.
right. Yeah,
Oops.
just don't tell anybody. So that's kinda helped me kinda pursue the path of Y Scouts, and, the one thing this would be interesting to get your take on it too. At Conscious Capitalism one time, I sat in on this,
Hey, do you want to tell the audience what conscious capitalism is? Because it sounds weird.
yeah, yeah. So there was which ended up it's a global organization. It was started by John Mackey in Austin, and
Whole
it was
Foods.
Yeah,
Foods.
he was the CEO of Whole Foods and ended up selling it to Amazon. I don't know, probably like 7, 8 years ago now. And so the whole premise was, capitalism is a force for good. And so they had like pillars, and I was, as an entrepreneur, I'm like, this is great. I think like we should take capitalism and we should be looking at it towards basically humankind and using it as a force for good. Because there's a lot of people that don't look at a capitalism that way,
Yeah.
and it's kind of more kind of socialism, I guess.
The four-letter word to a lot of people. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So we joined so that group, really got it, and I think the pillars were good, and still to this day, I still interact with some of the folks there, but, so there was a break hour session. I think I went to like 5, maybe like 6 or 7 CEO forum conferences. Is that what they were called in Austin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Their main conference. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember hearing from this guy about purpose and what he was saying. And like, this is at this point in my life where I'm like, man, this guy I think was right. He was saying the stronger purpose you have, for especially when it comes to a business and if you align your personal purpose, which they're a little bit different. You can't really, I guess you could, but I've always looked at them a little bit different. Like, you can't get everybody wrapped around one purpose and, all their purposes are like perfectly in alignment. But so his theory was the stronger a purpose was, which we was super strong. When we started Y Scouts, transforming how people and companies connect work that matters was such a strong purpose that it will burn very, very quickly. It won't burn out, but it'll burn faster at the beginning, and then it'll be harder to maintain
Mm.
longer term. And
Hey, really quickly, I want to share a quick story of how 30 minutes changed my life. It was about a decade ago where I was sitting across the table from an executive coach, and she asked me a couple simple questions that just gave me the clarity that I needed. I ended up working with her for the next 18 months, and it was a total unlock. It broke me free from being stuck. I grew that business, eventually sold that business, and I attribute most of my success because of this executive coaching. It's why I do what I do. Well, you too can have 30 minutes. You can have it completely free. If you want to just go to my website and go to my services page, you'll find a button there to book a 30-minute call. What if 30 minutes completely changes your life like it did mine? You won't know unless you do it. So I hope you will schedule a call today.
I have to admit, it's kind of a vulnerable thing for me to say, but I think like that is playing out a little bit, and not necessarily like I'm less motivated, but I don't talk about it and evangelize about it as well as I did years ago when I started it. Like I forget
Okay.
that most of the team members they weren't around then. So, but and I'm not I'm a person that doesn't really like to repeat myself very often, which is not a good trait for a leader because as a good leader, you
Right.
should repeating yourself often.
Exactly what I was thinking. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got I mean, you have to repeat yourself so much as it feels like it's ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I've started. I mean, I just admit, when hey, I've gone too long to talk about this, but let's remember why we all started this and what we're all kind of aiming for. And so it's been fun. It's been an awesome ride. We're still learning a lot. There's a lot of cool things we're doing. From an innovation side, I'd say AI has helped
Hmm,
us enhance a lot of the stuff that we're doing. We just finished
cool.
building our kind of first beta piece of software that anybody can use. It's at rollvisioning.com. It'll help you basically have a conversation with a bot named Scout, you and multiple people, and then it'll put together an opportunity profile, an ideal candidate profile, and a search strategy. And it's pretty comprehensive, like just through
Yeah.
a couple conversations. So we
Yeah, and
decided
I
to use
bet I
that.
bet it's all I bet it produces great results. But let's talk about that idea. Let's go back to what he said. So he said that if it'll burn hot in the beginning and then tail off. I mean, basically entropy, like,
Yeah.
which is basically a natural what law? Is that a natural law? We'll go with that. So I think that makes sense, and maybe why a leader has to artificially prop it up through repetition. But here's what I found, and so this would be my theory, and you alluded to it was you're not going to get everyone who's going to 100% drink the same Kool-Aid, right? They might have 70% overlap or 80%. I found that in a purpose-driven organization, when people come to it, they're like rah rah, like this is great. Oh, I'm so glad that you're purpose-driven, and they sort of check the box. That checks the box for them, and then they're like, okay, now let me go do my job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think for a lot of people, I think that is true. I think the commonality with most people that care about purpose is in general, I'm not going to say always, but they typically care a little bit more about the development of the team just in general and are a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more caring.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think that that is present and that can be true for sure.
yeah. And yeah, fighting entropy, and you fight it, in any business, you're going to fight, or organization, you're going to fight entropy constantly. So you got to constantly be reinventing yourself. But I think my antidote would be like the leaders have to keep pointing back to it, pointing back to it, pointing back to it, pointing back to it, and coming up with fresh and new ways to make it relevant. But like I overhear, I hear what you're doing, and I think it's um tremendous. Like it's life changing. Like you can, from an executive or leadership, you put them in the right company that can change their lives. Not only to change their lives, now they're a boss or a manager to someone, and if they're great people, like you're changing their lives. And if they're doing a great job for your client, then whatever the client is doing is changing lives, right? And it's so I think part of the problem is it's so hard to quantify, right? And you just sort of have to trust that what you're doing is good, but you can't necessarily say, we impacted 7,243 lives last month.
Yeah.
You can't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the most amazing, we're fortunate to be in this business, the people business. I mean, especially at the leadership level. I mean, there are so many incredible placements that we've made, and these people have gone in and not only done, what we thought they were capable of doing, but like the relationships that they've created and the innovation that they've done, with especially when you like bring a CEO, president, or COO, and that really goes in. And that's absolutely amazing. We see more of that. And, it's a win win win. We get to like take a person that, might be yearning for something just a little bit more. They might not be in the right spot, on the right team. I always kind of think about companies as teams. It helps me think about it better that they might be a better fit in a different role on a different team. And when you put them in that, man, that it's absolutely amazing. Like we are so lucky that we get the privilege of being even in the conversation, that we were part of putting some of these people together. And then there's the other side of it though. Every once in a while, because they're people, you can't 100% de-risk stuff. And so there's
Yeah.
every once in a while, like, and you got to own up and do whatever you can. But every once in a while, people will do some things that you kind of scratch your head at. But it's more of like, it's 90 something percent of the good. And then there's like, there's a small percentage of the other. But that is amazing. I think that's really what drives a lot of us, is the impact we ultimately get to have with these leaders in these companies, and kind of following up with them and see how much they've grown. And not only professionally, I love talking to people, especially as I get older. Like I've got clients that I've created such good friendships with, and get to follow along with their, how their family's doing, and just how things are even going outside the workplace, and then also inside the workplace. So it is a fun thing to do, and we feel very lucky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds awesome. So you had you had the conviction, you had the purpose, you had, part of that you created, a pretty distinct point of view of how this should be. So you're making not you're creating your own path basically, of how it should be, and that in and of itself is super rewarding. It sounds like you're leaning into AI, so you're still innovating. What I mean, if you could wave the magic wand, what do you think's happening in 5 years with Y Scouts and or the industry in general?
And I think that when it comes to, I think that there'll be a lot of innovation when it comes to technology. But I
Hmm.
think the people that never forget the building blocks of what a sound hiring process looks like, I think if they forget, and this is the danger of it, is if they start using AI enhanced tools and they don't remember the actual steps that they're replacing with the AI tools, I think that could be somewhat dangerous for some people. But the value is the people that never forget and know how to do it the manual way. I think like you got to remember that and then try to automate that, because you got to know the inputs, you got to know the process, you got to know the output, I think, to succeed. But
Yeah.
we're seeing stuff with AI that like is such a big benefit as long as it's used right. So I think in 5 years, um, I think, honestly, I'd predict we can do on the recruiting side. I mean, that's just a focus on that. I think there'll be recruiters that will be able to do the same amount of work that, 5 to 10 recruiters do, but from one desk.
Right.
It won't, you're still going to have a leadership search, obviously face to face at some point. But I'm convinced that some point can be pretty far in the process and focus just on that, which is like, hey, how are you and I reading each other as compatible people together? But the rest of it, I think you can get people to that last point. This is just, me, pretty effectively. And I think people are going to start trusting AI doing kind of pre screening a little bit more. Because when you think
Mm.
about it, we think about this, the way we reach out to people is we reach out to them, we let them know why we're reaching out. We're reaching out to you because you're in this industry. You've led, this many people. Looks like you've been successful in these areas. We give them like 4 or 5 reasons why we're reaching out. And so they're like, oh, versus like mass, like, like out.
Yeah.
So there's specific reasons why. I honestly think that can be done, with pieces of technology. And I think at some point humans will trust the person behind the technology as long as it's specific and it's serving the purpose of helping people get to better fits in roles and leadership roles than before. And I think that is totally possible. I think in 5 years, you'll basically be able to interview people once they've been through a process that they agreed to and that you put in front of them and they're totally fine with, and then just getting to finalize the like, are we compatible as people portion. So that's my prediction, which is a pretty strong prediction.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned the three, or I had a couple thoughts. One is like, one thing AI is not going to replace probably is leadership. And you mentioned the three characteristics. Have you identified anything else, or have you seen? Obviously we're a lot entrepreneurs are listening to us, and leadership, of course, is always high on our radar. Have you noticed any other traits about these people you place, especially when they're successful after you place them?
Yeah, I'd say the thing that sticks out at me most, and it's a lot of what people kind of ignore in the hiring process, is like people's ability to hold other people accountable, have direct, sooner and clearer conversations, and let them know where they stand at all times. I think it's it's the thing that everybody's yearning for, even when they don't know. They come to us and they're like, "Hey, we need somebody to help us kind of scale this." And when we really peel back the onion, the thing that I've noticed most is holding people accountable, because I don't see a day when, there's an AI bot firing people. And I know
Mhm.
this is not a very sexy topic, but like, holding people accountable, making sure they are doing what they say they do, and, getting the job done. I think that's the one of the things that's a lost art. And I think, even like, to give listeners that are in that spot, I mean, I think it's okay to ask somebody, like, tell me about all the people you've hired, and tell me about the people you've had to fire, and tell me what that looked like, so you kind of understand how they performance manage somebody, and how they ultimately, gave somebody the worst, news that they've probably had to give. It's the hardest part of leadership, is having to, let people go, and, negatively impact their life through it. I wouldn't say negatively, I mean, temporarily, but it is the hardest thing, I think, in leadership, that I don't think is going anywhere. And the thing that is most sought after now, especially with the lack of face to face, and everything being so remote,
Yeah.
holding people accountable is super important.
Yeah, and I like I wanna make sure I heard you correctly. You said, holding people accountable, having more direct, sooner, and clearer conversations?
Yeah, I really believe, because I'm actually, it's not my strength, and I have to learn to have more direct conversations. But I believe sooner and clearer is always better.
Yeah.
The sooner you
Yeah.
can you see something, call it what you see. If you're a leader that has a hard time, you're not accusing anybody, but as soon as you see something, you gotta just say, "Hey, here's what I'm seeing. Did you see that?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're identifying it and just witnessing it and calling it for what it is. And I think as soon as people quit doing that, that's where things go off the rails, and somebody thinks they're doing better than what their, leader thinks they're doing, or what they're really doing. And so, yeah, I think sooner and clearer, that concept, is what the best leaders, on earth continue to follow.
Yeah. I've seen that too, and I've heard it in the terminology of clear agreements of who is doing what when. And, if you're delegating something or giving someone a responsibility, before you leave the room or the chat or the whatever, is like, who's doing what and when. And, okay, now I would rather you be responsible to that date than me hold you accountable,
Yeah,
but I can still hold you accountable too. And so we call it, when things go badly, it's because we have all these sloppy agreements, right? We're not clear on who's doing what and when. But I like your language, sooner than clearer.
sooner and
Um,
clearer is always better.
yeah. All right. So in terms of leadership development, how are you developing yourself as a leader? Is there anything you've done recently or are planning to do that you would recommend?
Yeah, it's with something that is relatively new, so I wasn't prepared to share it, but I will. I
Okay.
think that, that the conversation around AI it's out there. I think there's even a study that they're taking people that, and it's not a peer reviewed, but I think everybody's probably heard a version of this, where they're studying people that use AI to, like, write an essay, purely use AI, and then somebody uses Google, and then somebody actually writes it on their own. Their ability to recall that information, and like, remember and actually learn stuff, dramatically, decreases when you're just like, I think we've come in this world where we're trying to be so efficient that we have so many things, and we're taking so many shortcuts.
Yeah.
So the way I think about this is, there's probably a few programs out there, but there's this program in particular that's called Zenith OS, that I use, and it's the concept of it is to use AI to benefit you in order to get where you want to go. So AI is obviously really good at, critically thinking. So if you let AI get to know you and you trust it enough, which, again, people might not be comfortable doing this, but, like, I've went through this program where I've shared every assessment I've ever taken with AI. I've then
Yeah.
been through this process where I tell it kind of what's important to me in my life, like my relationship with my kids, my wife, with God, like, you choose, or spiritual, whatever you got to want to say.
Hmm.
And then, it's so it basically gets to understand you better than you know yourself, because it can critically think, it can see patterns that you don't see.
Right.
And then the practicality that I've been using is about a month, or a little over a month. I have daily check-ins with this particular AI, tool. And it's basically talking about, like, the top three things. So it's kind of a planner in one sense, but it also is a coach in a sense too, because
Yeah.
it remembers everything. And sometimes you just have to ask it, like, "Hey, what should I be focusing on that I shouldn't?" And so it's collecting all this data So I think it's been fascinating, for me, and it's been useful. And maybe I'm a little bit more ADD and like unorganized. So I think the organization and then it kind of helping me, guide my decisions and, recommending like things to do because it has all this information and kind of understands the psychology and, about health, mental health. So it's been really helpful for me. So, like I said, I wasn't prepared. I just say like it's been amazing because there's certain ways you can use, and in this case, I'm using it to really leverage getting to know me better, and then asking it to recall what its recommendations are, and it'll have me rank the things that are important to me, like how I am as a leader, business performance, my relationship with my children and my wife, and those types of things. And so it kind of knows what's going on. I mean, it'll tell
Yeah.
me when I need to kind of take a break and go take some time off. I mean, there's a lot of things. So that's been helpful and really helping me. But I think in general, if we go back to the question about,
Well,
um,
let me clarify real quick.
yeah,
Zenith OS is it its own LLM, and is it private, or how's it?
it's a program this guy Rich Sheffron has put on. You can and he built it. It's basically it it's not its own program because you can use it really in any LLM, but you'll
Mhm.
share the entire framework, which is like, I don't know how many pages, gotta be like 20, 30 pages of, like, information, and then that guides the steps that it walks you through.
Yeah.
So, if you look up Rich Sheffron and Zenith OS, he offers you can get it there, and then you can coach. I like I said, I'm just from my personal use, it's been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's no wonder that, you said the memory recall is low. When someone uses, ChatGPT to write an essay and it does it for you, yeah, I don't think you're gonna remember
No, yeah.
that.
No, it's hey,
It's
and it
not.
goes back to, like, so I think this is a great conversation. I think it goes back to, like, I've kinda come full circle where, I'm a time hack junkie. Like, I've got all these ways to save time. I mean, like, when I'm
Yeah.
feeling best about myself, I'm working out while listening to a podcast while getting my car washed in the, parking lot of the country club. Like, I'm hitting, 3 or 4 things, knocking it out of the park. But I think that there's a certain point where now we've come full circle where doing things the long way is actually back to being in style. Like
Yeah.
critically thinking about different paths you want to take your business versus like getting a couple ideas from ChatGPT and letting that run with it. I think like that's good. It's the same thing with, working out and eating healthy. Like you can take Ozempic and get results, but like, is that really gonna, is that good for you? And is it really gonna last? Probably not. So I think that a lot of these things are coming back to fruition about doing things, being willing to do the hard work and doing things the long way is still going to outpace the people that take all the shortcuts and forget how to do it the long way.
Right, it's still valuable. It's sort of fun. It's like, what are you in such a hurry for? Like, why are you trying to cram so much in for what? For what? To what end? And I do think it's interesting. I wanted to write a post on this. Just the state of human nature that we have this most amazing technology come out, right? Like just mind blowing. This has to be the biggest technology that the world will ever see, or at least for recent times. But um, and the best we can come up with is that it will make you more productive. And like Apple does a commercial, like Apple Think Different, and they do a commercial showing this schlubby guy having Apple AI that doesn't even work. Apple AI actually craft a mundane email. Like Apple, that seriously, that's what you're going to use AI for, Apple? Like
Yeah.
that, like what are we doing? So yeah, this whole idea of like being more so I can do more crap faster
Yeah.
versus
Yeah, go ahead.
like versus what you're talking about Zenith is like Zenith is like no, like this is improving me. This is quality. This is qualitative, not quantitative. Like we're using AI to spam. That's our best use case right now. So we can spam people.
Yeah, one thing that happened to me recently, and again, this is kind of a vulnerable like story, just because I think a lot of people fall into this. This was right a couple months ago back. I was like, hey, I need to go focus on my daughter, 7-year old, and so I decided to go have dinner with her, no phone. and sit with her, and I sit down, and I'm, sitting there, like, talking, having a normal seven-year-old, dad conversation.
You started twitching, withdrawal.
Well, yeah, and I'm, like, sitting there, and I feel like I'm, like, in it. Like, I'm like, "Alright, this is great." Like, I'm putting in some good quality time, and she starts, like, kinda laughing, and I was like, "Hey, what's so funny, babe?" And she's like, "Why do you eat so fast?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I was, like, appalled with myself. I'm like, "I don't even know I'm doing it." To your point, like, I'm just so used to trying to get so much shit done that the most important thing is sitting in front of me, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
hurry through it. Like, it's and so I share that with, like, I mean, I'm learning to, I think, and, everybody knows that our brains, and we're not meant to be, like, engaged with something so long. So, I mean, I've been really focusing on, like, getting away from technology, taking walks, taking hikes, like, doing anything to, anything to get bored. Everybody's afraid of being bored now too. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, go get bored. Go on a walk and, like go see something you've never even noticed before and be bored for an hour. I guarantee you're gonna be more, you're gonna think better and feel better about yourself than, trying to get, Apple to write you an email, which I think Apple's kind of, they're so behind on the AI stuff. They should have been the market leader in this, and they're not. That's a whole nother
Right.
topic.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that's another topic is writing. Speaking of that Apple thing, it's like there's such a gift in writing. Don't let AI do it for you. Like there's there's such, I mean, it gets you thinking. I mean, there are so many side benefits to doing the work yourself. So it will be interesting to just see. Yeah, there was some hope with Gen Z and these younger generations that they're sort of, pushing technology away. And I hope AI doesn't come and ruin it. And at the same time, amazing technology. How can we leverage it? I mean, I actually coded a web app last night for I did uh, a diagnostic tool
Mm.
for entrepreneurs, and I'll probably put this out here soon, or by the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably be out there. Mm. I mean, I coded it in like two hours. And I didn't code it. AI coded it. AI coded it in 2 hours. And if I would have charged for this back in the day, it easily would have been $50,000, and it would have taken us 6 months. And it did it in 2 hours. And that I don't know. And maybe I'm hypocritical of saying that. It's like, you'd learn stuff programming. But like that is amazing, and I can't wait to get it to my clients to use. There's so much opportunity there.
Yeah,
That's
but to
just
your point, you're building something that's gonna help people be more introspective in order to ultimately help them, and I think that there's a fine line between where people take shortcuts and, like, they just don't even get the reps in, or don't even there's no reflection, which that's another thing is, like, our time is so hijacked, as everybody knows. I mean, you go on Instagram, like, any normal innocent person could get stuck in a scroll hole on Instagram. I mean, they're really good at that stuff, but
That's
they
why
just
I don't
hijack.
go on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get in and out of there because it's a bottomless pit of, like, garbage in some cases.
Yeah. Well, all right. So, I asked every guest, Max, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So there's entrepreneur out there, either, and a lot of folks that I work with mid-career always wanted to do their own thing. Or there's someone who started, maybe something not too long ago and is just in the grind and like, is this really what I signed up for? So, uh, so we'll just see how you handle it. What advice would you give that would sort of, fit both those folks? What
So
advice and encouragement?
the person that's in the grind and one that's, like, just coming out of the gate?
Yeah, and thinking I've always wanted to do this. Should I do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody starts for the same reason. I think for as far as I go, like, the most categorized entrepreneurship is for freedom. And I think, like, embrace the fact that you have freedom. I think that there's an incredible feeling that comes from signing a check, like filling it out on the front and then signing the bottom and flipping it over, signing the back and depositing it. Like,
You're
that
like, wait a
feels
minute, is
good.
this legal?
Yeah, exactly. But there's also, that there's, if your number one goal is freedom, which most people are, just don't forget that. Just make sure that if you're in it, be in it. Don't, it's going to be stressful. I think, Elon Musk, I think there's something that he says. I mean, not everything he says I necessarily agree with, but I mean, gonna have to tolerate a lot of pain and a lot of stress. And so I would suggest taking care of yourself physically over anything else because you're going to have to deal with those stresses. And at the end of the day, everything comes from within. And you're always going to be challenged with, like, do I really want this or how do I feel? And if you're not physically healthy, you're going to have a hard time with that. So I would suggest prioritizing physical and mental health over everything, and everything else will fall into shape if it's meant to be.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So the idea is for if you really want freedom, um, then take care of yourself and be patient. There will be seasons where it's tough. I hope it will never be Elon stupid tough. I mean, he's a maniac. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But but I would agree that is the benefit. I just rolled in from my cabin. Speaking of, getting out in nature and stuff like that, and exactly the reason why I do what I do is so I can have freedom. I can go up to the cabin. I can go up to the mountains when I want to, and yeah, it's a great reward.
Yeah, and I think the freedom obviously quickly doesn't become a freedom, but the one thing that I feel like you can control in most cases is your physical health. And so when you start to lose control, always go back to the one thing you can
Yeah.
control. You can control your workouts, you control staying in shape, taking care of your body and taking care of your brain. And then, the rest will hopefully take care of itself.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thank you. So, Max, where can we find you?
Yeah, Scouts.com is our leadership search firm. And then I put out a decent amount, I think 3 pieces of content in LinkedIn. So you can find Max Hansen at Y Scouts, or you'll figure it out through searching on LinkedIn. But those are probably the 2 best places to find me.
All right, Max, it was great to catch up and have this conversation. I appreciate it. And thank you. Thanks for your time, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, this is another episode of Made to Matter. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.